Hello, today we are with Jagannath Sarangapani. He's from India, he's an advocate too. And please, before we start, tell us how you get involved with, who you represent, what are you doing for vaping now?
Well, my story goes back about 7 years. Actually, longer than that. I started smoking when I was 27. I was stuck in a tiny little village in Germany and I was bored out of my skull. And so I picked up smoking. I had never smoked before that. In fact, I was somebody who strongly believed against anyone smoking. But then having started smoking, I had to catch up for all the years I hadn't smoked, right? And so before I knew it, I was smoking 40 cigarettes a day. Every once in a while, we would talk about quitting and so on. I didn't want to quit. I was loving my nicotine. Honestly, I really enjoyed my smoking experience, and so I was continuing to smoke. Family pressure, all that aside. Yeah, I had some rules. I would not smoke inside my house. So I spent most of my time outside my house. You know, I still wanted to get my smoking. So this friend of mine and I would keep discussing techniques. How do you quit? Okay, let's try gum. It was horrible. I couldn't work with gum. Maybe that's because nobody teaches you how to use these things, do they? No one teaches. And so I tried gum. It was awful. Then I tried patches. Patches, you can't keep them. You've got to keep moving them around, and all of a sudden they would be all over your body, and I would still smoke. Tried aversion therapy. That was bad. It can actually be quite bad if you don't know what you're doing with that. And this was with a clinical aversion therapy. And so those things were bad. And short of my 47th birthday, we were all sitting outside partying. And so this friend of mine and I were talking about once again quitting. And this is while having a smoke, right? And so we say, hey, there's something called an e-cigarette, which has come. And so, vaping, let's try this. And so that night, in the middle of the party, we're doing this research on vaping. And so we find somebody in India actually selling this stuff. And so immediately we ordered 2. So we get these tanks, coils, juices. And we don't know what to do with it. So we are screwing around, putting it together, trying to see if it works, this, that. We burnt a few coils. And eventually we got it right. And I remember picking up that vape maybe 3 days after my birthday. And I haven't smoked a single cigarette since. Not one. And having gone through my experience of struggling around, trying to figure what was right, I started talking to people. And we got onto the net, we found a lot of chat groups and so on. And so we started putting things together, and I started helping people work with their devices, at least to help them tweak it, fix it, so on and so forth. I also have a habit of buying things. If they're not working, I don't give them off, I don't sell them, I just keep them. And so I ended up with sort of a museum of vapes for all kinds of things. But what I was always looking for was finding something that would work just fine for me, which would suit my requirement. So this was all going good, nice. We had a few vape meets and chucking clouds, and I would always be the oldest in the group, okay? I'm 54, to be honest. And all the other vapors were in their 20s, late 20s and so on. So I had this air of respectability, perhaps, But and most of them were younger than my son, okay? And so, well, we would keep talking about these things, and suddenly, before we knew it, there was this talk of a possible ban. And so we started getting our heads together, and Samrat was driving it really hard in those days, and he was driving it alone, and I made some posters and chucked it, and regulate, don't ban, and so on and so forth. I'd thrown these things up there, and that's when Samrat gave me a call and said, hey, why don't you join the movement so that we amplify our voice, because we really need people who are invested in this. I am. And the reason is, it worked for me. And I was a smoker of 40 cigarettes a day, and if it could help me, and it's now 7-something years, I've not smoked a single cigarette. I'm healthier than I was then. Believe me, I go for my annual physicals and so on. I'm actually really healthy right now. I can run 5 kilometers in around 40 minutes, which is not so bad. And that tells me that whatever it is I'm doing, no matter what anybody else says that it's bad, it's actually good. I remember before I quit, we were at my friend's resort in Kerala. We were walking along the backwaters, and so 3 classmates, okay, we were from childhood friends from school. We decided to run. I couldn't run 100 meters.
And now you are in 5 kilometers.
Yeah, so
yeah, it's amazing.
that tells me it works.
But anyway, even if it's experience, tell us, the ban came into you. What's the situation now in India?
We're still fighting the ban. Initially, it came in the form of an ordinance, which is basically, this is something that the government is doing, but that's valid for only 90 days. Within 90 days, they should either make it into an act of parliament, or it gets thrown out. And unfortunately, it so happens that this former health minister of ours, he was heading the WHO, and he probably just wanted to give himself an award for doing something against tobacco. And so he really drove this very, very hard. And the kind of comments that were floating around, we were all glued to the television sets listening to this argument. They were bizarre. None of these people, none of these members of parliament had ever probably even seen this device. Okay, and we're not alone. I mean, we ended up having conversations with all kinds of people, including from Malaysia, and that was always the same. These people who were deciding our fate, calling this so bad and such a bad product, and it's closer to death, and it has got hashish and all kinds of things, okay? They hadn't even seen this device. And these were the people who were deciding our fate. Sadly, a majority government, the law got passed. We're still facing this ban. But what did that do?
When do you think this ban, I know it's a very difficult question, but when do you think the ban will end? Or do you see a close future for being able to unblock it?
I'd like to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I hope somebody doesn't steal that bulb when I'm just about to get out. But thankfully, that minister is no longer there. We have a new health minister who seems more rational. And we are hoping that good sense will prevail and we can re-engage. We have all gone through 2 years of COVID. And being responsible Indians, we didn't want to push this aspect of talking about a vape ban in front of them when they were dealing with a pandemic. So we were a little responsible on that one. And also when you consider reality, they wouldn't have heard us. They wouldn't have even looked at one of our representations. But I'm hopeful now that we are all able to move out and business is getting back to being as usual. It'll work now.
How much, I understand what you're putting with the Minister of Health, but how much do you think in this problem for India have to do that India government is so attached to tobacco industry?
That's part of the problem. That is part of the problem. And so ITC is one company, and I don't have problems naming them. So ITC is owned more than 32% by Government of India owned companies. And you're going to laugh. Those Government of India companies run the health insurance. Okay, so there are Government of India health insurance companies that have invested in tobacco. Okay, and so the day the ban got announced, the share market price of ITC went. gives you an idea of it was a threat perception of here is a product that's actually becoming popular, driven by consumers, not by a single company. No company came in and said, here is a THR product, use it. No. We consumers were looking, and what we did was help each other quit. Okay, and so a consumer-driven movement got bashed, and that's where we find ourselves.
Going back to the thing, do you think that this ban will rise in a medium, long, or we really don't have any idea?
I would like to say I don't have an idea because that's the truth, but I really believe it's a medium-term problem which will be there for some time. We've got elections coming up in a couple of years again, and so it's possible that we will see it during this period. What we have been trying to do is arm the opposition parties, which are kind of fragmented, with enough knowledge so that they actually take this one forward. We have found a few members of parliament who have been willing to come on our shows and talk about this.
Nice. And now you have a full ban on products. How is the users getting the products? And more important, how the users know what they are vaping?
What the users know what they are vaping, it depends on how experienced that user is. Unfortunately, that's a serious problem that we have. There is no regulation. So it's available freely in the gray market. Okay, there's not one product.
Gray or black?
I call actually black. Yeah, it's not gray.
No, because we used to call black market, and you imagine someone going to a
shady
corner.
Corner picking. No.
How it's in India? You have some shops that works anyway, or you need to go to a place that you need to knock 3 times and they open the shop, or how the users get this?
These are all sold online.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and these are sold through a referral system. So you got to know someone who then opens an access, and so it's available. Yeah,
kind of a black market.
It is black market. But what happens is every once in a while you're going to hear a story of somebody having gotten cheated. So the person transferred the money and never got the product, or got 2 bricks, and that kind of stuff, which happens everywhere, which wasn't the case before. But for somebody who's new, who's looking at wanting to quit, we still get questions, I need help. Now, if it's a stranger, I'm also nervous about giving him advice. You can go here because I don't know who that person is, which was previously freely available. I could point someone, go to this shop, he will help you out. I can't do that anymore. So it's only somebody who is known to me. I get a call saying, hey, this guy also wants to quit. Can you help him out? And that's where, we start engaging. So it's taken a beating there.
What are the options today in India if someone wants to quit? Legal options.
Legal options, well, there are these medicinal options that are available in drugstores over the counter. You have nicotine gums, you got lozenges, you got nicotine melting strips, you got patches.
Oh my God, I don't know what are the melting strips. You just hit me.
Okay, it's like your mouth fresheners. Remember these tiny strip mints that you just kind of put and it kind of dissolves on your tongue?
We don't have them.
Listamint. They are called listamints.
Okay, for
maybe
me...
I'll go upstairs.
Listamint. They try to put it in Chile. No one...
the tiny little blue boxes.
You have that kind of stuff with nicotine.
You get that stuff with nicotine.
Oh my God,
I might have a pack upstairs. Maybe I'll give it to you for...
for a study of the university.
Exactly, so that's there. These are over-the-counter products sold in medical shops. But snus is available.
It's available.
Snus is available. It's hovering in the market wherein the government hasn't attached a lot of focus on, but snus is.
Snus and nicotine pouches, or only snus?
Some nicotine pouches are there because I prefer to use a nicotine pouch. I mean, it took me, it's a mental block for me. I've taken so much time to get out of tobacco.
Yeah.
I don't want to try.
Same for me, I understand
I don't
you.
want to try a tobacco snooze thing. So I look for a nicotine pouch. And so they have made some, they have developed some, and they seem to work okay. You can import white snooze
or nicotine pouches.
Pouch. You can import them. Those are allowed to come in.
And you can sell them too in the shops?
I've not seen many people selling them.
Okay.
I don't see many people selling them, but they are available. You can go online and search, and you're going to find people out there who are actually doing it. So a good alternative is, your nicotine pouches or snooze. Those are still available in India, and that's the only alternative. And so that's what we have been talking to people about in our engagements with audiences. We say, well, gentlemen, vapes are illegal, but here is something that is legally available for you to buy, because there are a lot of people who don't want to get into this black market, because a lot of vapors have actually jumped back to smoking because of its non-availability, So that's the problem that we are working with.
Our time is ending, but it's something very important. You were talking that your history on vaping start only 7 years ago. And 7 years after, today we had you speaking in the GFN. First, how do you feel about being part of speaking in a conference of the GFN? Because it's like
a conference like GFN rejuvenates you, okay? I went through a burnout because I was doing a lot of this, and so when my president, Samrat, came back, was running, I told him I need time out because I need to...
Just to make it clear for the audience, Samrat is the president of the Association of Consumers
in India, and we are called the
because
Association.
We have to talk about Samrat because we know him, but it's
right?
like that's Samrat.
So Samrat's the president of the Vapers Association of India. We call ourselves AVI for short, and so I told him I needed a break because this was just getting a little too intensive for me. See, we're all consumers. Nobody pays us to do this thing, right? Yeah. And so we also have businesses to run. We have jobs to do. And so I experienced that. And so I told him I needed time off. But when you come to a conference like this, and you meet people from, 40-something countries?
I think this year it's quite more.
Right?
I will have an interview with Gary Stimson later, and I will get the number.
But when you see that, and when you see, here are so many people who perhaps had a burnout, but never something so intensive. So for me, I take this back as a learning experience. How do you remain in the game and not burn yourself out? And so this is something which is exciting, okay? And you go back more convinced that you are on the right path, okay? And for me, that's important. Speaking, gotta be honest, I was a little nervous.
It was not, we couldn't see that.
Visible?
No, it was not visible.
So I was, but it was enjoyable because it's a good thing I was a host, not a speaker, because the speaker had to do most of the talking, right? But holding it together and being amongst such a knowledgeable panelist, and the audience was incredible, okay? And
well, our viewers can see this whole conference in the GFN site and channel of YouTube, but will you let them know a little so they can get interested and go to see that panel? What was about?
This was about human rights and the legal challenges that we are facing as a community of people who are involved in tobacco harm reduction. Now, we have a tendency to take our human rights for granted. Okay, now this is something that is weird but true. We only recognize our human rights when somebody infringes upon it and somebody actually comes forward and puts it down, and that's when you take it up and you look at it. But to look at it in all its seriousness, there are more than 170 countries who have signed up this Charter on Human Rights. Yet, thus far we have always let it get abused when it comes to tobacco harm reduction. So we were exploring this avenue of saying, why shouldn't the human rights angle be explored and taken forward and actually driven, because harm reduction is a basic human right, and my right to have access to harm reducing alternatives for my nicotine dependence, you need this to be part of human rights, and we need to drive that angle definitely going forward.
It's a very interesting topic, and we hope that the people that is viewing our channel go to GFN and see this conference and all the others. But human rights, as you said, we always give it for granted, and they're not.
And they're not.
That's so difficult. The last question to finish, a very short question. It's vaping smoking?
No, it's not. Absolutely not.
That's it. I want to thank you for your time in this, our channel of vaping. It's not smoking.
It's not smoking. Thank you so much.